Hi everyone, my name is Freya Thimsen. I'm an assistant professor of English at Indiana University, and today I am reviewing The Intellectual Imagination, Knowledge and Aesthetics in North Atlantic and African Philosophy by Dr. Omedi Ochieng, who is a soon-to-be associate professor at Denison University. The book was published by Notre Dame University Press in 2018, and this book is a very exciting contribution to the landscape of historically informed rhetorical theory in our field. I think that it will be of interest to a lot of different subfields in rhetorical studies, and I'm just going to kind of hit on a few that I think that are obvious to me right off the bat. But this work is incredibly rich and incredibly rewarding. It's certainly the kind of book that you can read over and over again and get something fresh out of it every time. And I think that some of the implications of this work will continue to unfold as it's read 5 years from now, 10 years from now. It's certainly not a work that is limited in its implications by the moment of its publication. So one of the areas of rhetorical studies that I think will really benefit from this book is transnational rhetorics of various kinds. A lot of work in that field, as far as I know, tends to be more kind of engaged in kind of public culture questions. Maybe that's just what I'm familiar with. This book is the rare bird of being a rhetorical theory that's transatlantic and transnational. I mean, it's transatlantic, but also engaged with African philosophy and intellectual culture. And that's a really cool, exciting thing to have emerging is rhetorical theory that's transnational. So I think another area, a kind of emerging area in rhetorical studies that could potentially be in close dialogue with this work is the decolonial studies, which, as we know, is having a bigger and bigger impact on the way that we think about rhetorical studies as an enterprise, as well as some more specific questions around the position that we give the classical tradition. And I think that this work is interesting, contributes to that shift in interesting ways because it takes seriously, very seriously, the classical rhetorical tradition. There's substantial engagement with the thought of Plato, Aristotle, the Sophists, Socrates, around questions of epistemology and aesthetics that really drive the work. And but at the same time, there's a very nuanced and careful effort to historically and politically contextualize some of those kind of go-to figures, or not the figures themselves, but the intellectual tradition that they represent. And so I think that I would love to see this work be put in dialogue with some of the decolonial theory that we're seeing making its way into rhetorical studies. We have a very well-established dialogue about the relationship between epistemology and aesthetics in rhetorical studies that goes back several decades, and this work is centrally concerned with many of the questions about the aesthetics of rhetoric, the relationship between aesthetics and epistemology. Some of that work has informed subfields like the rhetoric of science in really interesting ways. I think that this work can certainly contribute to that subfield if read in a certain way. But I think one of the most provocative elements of this book that I thought was really exciting was the way that it calls into question strict disciplinary frameworks as the kind of as motivating forces for doing theoretical or intellectual work. So this book, certainly kind of sees the discipline of philosophy or the kind of practice of philosophy as one of its kind of primary locations of intervention, but it's also kind of calling into question the the disciplinary stranglehold that philosophy has on philosophy, which is, a perspective that we're very familiar with in rhetorical studies. And so I think that anyone who is kind of interested in those questions is really going to find this book to be exciting and engaging. I can certainly see this book being assigned in graduate seminars on decolonial rhetoric, transnational rhetoric, rhetorical theory, both classical and contemporary, rhetoric and aesthetics. Those are all areas in which graduate seminars, I think, could really be enriched by the type of incredibly erudite and insightful writing that is taking place in this book. So I strongly recommend that you take a look at this. This is really exciting, innovative work for us to be able to claim as a field, and I hope you have a chance to take a look at it.